This is the Galaxy Tab S4 versus the Galaxy Tab S6. Okay, so over the years I have been using Samsung tablets since the word go, with the first Samsung tablet sitting over there, the Galaxy Tab. We've had a myriad of tablets over the years, however the Tab S has been their top-ranking flagship models that are for the power user, the professional, and just the darn right ludicrously rich. Still priced below the iPad, both the Samsung Galaxy Tab S3 and 4 were noticeably more expensive than the Tab S and the Tab S2 when they were first launched. But they provided a decent option for someone who wasn't interested in purchasing an iPad using the iOS because they were fully entrenched in Android, but didn't want to have to go for one of the cheaper alternatives that you may find through Argos or Amazon, made by Bosch, Arcos, Lenovo, or one of the many other companies that have had a go over the years. So, having a look at the S4 is, well, a particularly bulky tablet that has a considerable amount of weight. Putting them down next to one another, you can see there isn't really too much in the way of difference in size. The S4 is a slight bit taller than the S6. There's a deeper bezel on each. If I should turn this around this way, you can see there's a deeper bezel on the S4. The S6 has had it reduced by about 2 to 3 millimeters, and that's the whole way round. There's a considerably larger bezel here as opposed to here. When it comes to thickness, the S6 is remarkably thinner. The S4, it's difficult to suggest that these are actually only one generation apart. Whilst there is the S5e, I wouldn't try to put the two together because the S5e is so underpowered that a power user probably wouldn't entertain it because they want the faster processor. These are in a different field altogether. This has the 835 inside and this has the 855. But it also has to do with the size of battery as well, given that this has a smaller battery, but not noticeably smaller. The battery on the Tab S6 is a little bit smaller than the S4, weighing in at 7,040 milliamp hours, whereas the S4 is 7,300 milliamp hours. However, more noticeably, I've started using the capacity to protect your battery on the S6. That allows you to only charge it up to, say, 85%, and I've not noticed it having any major effect on my daily usage. So inside, the storage is significantly different. This one comes with 64 or 256, whereas the S6 now comes with 128 as standard, or 256 if you plumb for the bigger, better model. This will have 4 GB of RAM for the cheaper version, although there's a 6 GB of RAM version available. Again, with this, there's a 6 GB RAM version straight out of the box. There is an 8 GB version available, but that's on the 256, which is exceedingly more expensive. Just for those who want to know, this is the 4 GB version and this is the 6 GB version, and everything runs butterily smooth on both of them, to be honest. Some video editing can lag on the S4, and that is one of the main reasons why I plumbed for the S6, just to make a bit of a difference there for quick and easy video editing on the go. One of the more notable features that has been upgraded is the camera on this. This has a 13 megapixel with an LED flash on the back. They upgraded that to a 4K video camera, 13 megapixel without LED flash. If you notice, the flash has disappeared there. Although it's got a bulbous camera exterior. You can see where I've had to set it down. it is actually starting to mark, and I'm not sure if that's just stuff, oh, it's stuff stuck in there, but it's a concern that this will happen. So you need to have a case for this, regardless of what you're doing. That this needs a case, and we'll discuss that later on. The front-facing cameras on both of these are both 8 megapixel, and to be honest, there is no real difference between them. They work just as well as each other. And the screen, whilst it would seem that the screen on this may be a little smaller than the S4, they are actually identical screens. They're both 10.5 inch Super AMOLED displays, 2560 by 1600 with a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. They both now run Android Pie. This got an update a couple of months ago, just before this was released, although you'll see online a lot of people saying that this only runs Android 8. Nope, it's up to 9 now. The speakers that we have are on all 4 corners on the top and bottom sides, and they are truly a world apart, even though they are somewhat of the same technical specifications. They're quad speakers. They're tuned by AKG with Dolby Atmos support. However, these fill a room quite easily. These can sound a bit meek whenever you get them up to full volume, and there's a bit of a hum from the tablet. These just do the job. However, I will say that the lowest volume setting, whenever you take it down to mute and then press the volume button once to take it up one, say, or 10% or whatever, they're still really loud, and it's kind of annoying. This had a nice first notch on the volume controller. This one is too loud, and I'm going to have to look for solutions in order to bring it down just that wee bit more, because if you want to maybe play a game late at night without using headphones, it still kind of fills the room a bit too much. I'm not entirely satisfied with this. And then that brings us obviously to the lack of one particular piece of hardware, the 3.5mm headphone jack. They've gotten rid of it. It's gone. So that limits your options for this. You have to go Bluetooth or not. But you can whack in a pair of headphones that you can keep by your bed or whatever. This, you have to have a pair of headphones charged up and not be connected to another couple of items. They both have Bluetooth 5.0 built into them, and I don't know whether it's dual channel on this because I haven't actually synced this up to 2 devices to find out. I know the Samsung Galaxy S10 series does have dual Bluetooth, so you can hook up a couple of Bluetooth devices and use them at the same time with it. This only has single channel because I have a Galaxy Watch, and I tried to use my Galaxy earbuds with this, and I had to switch between the 2 items in order to get them going. This one I'd like to think is the same as the S10, and you would be able to run the 2 items natively without having to switch. So going back to the weight of the 2, whilst they are noticeably different, it actually boils down to the S4 is 482 grams as opposed to the S6, which is 420 grams. And they are a world apart. They really are. So that would bring us to these 2 little doohickeys here. The S Pens. Now, the S Pen is a love it or hate it thing. You either really do get down with it, or you use it for the thrill of it and then simply put it back in the box. It was particularly easy for the S4 because you couldn't really take it with you unless you had a case that allowed you to enclose it. This has options. It sticks to the side of the tablet or the back of the tablet. You store it here if you want to lose it, and you can knock it off really easy. It also means that your tablet is never set flat, but that also helps protect the camera bump, and perhaps that was a strategy as to why they put it under here. As one of the YouTube commenters pointed out in a previous video, you can stick it to the edge, and I think you can do it on the other side as well if memory serves. Yes, you can stick it to either edge whenever you're using it, and that is handy, but it's not really something that you're going to be using terribly often. I have started using this whenever I'm slipping it into my bag, because I've noticed keeping it on the back, you slide it down into the bag and it comes off and it sits at the bottom of the bag, or maybe it starts moving around. Whereas you do that, you can slide it down into your bag and this will pop up at the top of the bag, and, well, depending on your bag, it may stay safe, may not. Using the S Pen is really quite simple. It's very handy, it's quite intuitive, and the extra functionality that's been put into it is a real gimmick that I can't see any point in anyone ever using, other than maybe for a presentation where they're using that to move on to the next slide. It would be great if it could do laser pointer and all that kind of thing. I haven't tested that out fully yet because I haven't had need to, but I imagine someone somewhere will put together a video as to whether or not you can do that. But that brings us to cases, and you have to buy a case for this. There aren't too many options out there. A lot of the options that you'll maybe find on Amazon outside of the actual genuine official case utilize these little hooks to hold it in, and then they have a cutout here for the stylus to sit, meaning that whenever you actually close it, the stylus here is or it'd be over here, wouldn't it? The stylus here would be exposed, meaning you could knock it out quite easily, relying on the depth of the actual cover to hold it in place, just to give it a little bit of extra security or added security. That's not great. I wouldn't recommend that. And then the official offering from Samsung has the keyboard built into it, which adds a large amount of bulk and heft. And to be honest, not everyone is going to want the keyboard and the trackpad, and it's £160. This one, for the S4, didn't have the keyboard built into it. It is merely just a regular book cover, very simple, and has this additional piece for the stylus, and I think it was £30 off Amazon. There doesn't seem to be an option for the S6 at the moment for one of these. There are plenty of other options on Amazon, however they do have that cutout here for the stylus. Some of them have little hinges to close over, but they are few and far between, so I will come back to you about a better solution for some kind of folio that doesn't cost the earth, have a keyboard built in, and you can take it with you, and it doesn't have these, and it isn't particularly bulky. Because let's face it, there's no point in buying something so slim and nice as this and then put it into a really bulky holder. You want to have something that's nice and reflective of the thin values of this tablet, because that's one of the reasons why you would be moving from this to this. Now, the S4 having this stylus didn't really benefit from it unless you had something to carry it in at all times, in which case you would be leaving this at home. It also didn't require charging. This one does. It only charges on the position on the back. You can't charge it outside of using it on the back of the tablet. I don't believe there is a charging solution available from Samsung for you to charge this at home. However, it has such a small battery, it only takes, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so to charge off the tablet. Also, that meddles around with your percentages on your batteries. So using this all day, you're going to notice that your battery is still being drained, although not rapidly, by the stylus. Other stylus technologies are actually compatible, and just to show you that the old stylus still works. The technology hasn't been changed, it's still the same thing. Okay, so we're going to do a quick benchmark between the two, the S4 and the S6. I've turned off Wi-Fi so that they don't get bothered with notifications and things in the background, and we're just going to go. You can really see the stutter here as the S4 struggles with the frame rates and things, but the S6 is silky smooth. Some noticeable loading time differences here, where the S6 had caught up with some of the screenshots. This one actually accelerated ahead there with loading this next graphical marvel. So it is quite notable that this is still ahead of this in the actual running of the benchmarks, despite the fact there might have been just a nanosecond of me tapping the screens, but this is significantly ahead of this. I had thought that this would actually get through most of the tasks faster than that, but you know, it's just an interesting objective way to look at it, that this is running the benchmarking tool faster. There must be something running in the background of this that maybe has slowed things down somewhere along the lines. Okay, so there we have the top scores. We have 202,824, which is quite a high score. We've got the breakdown there of the CPU, GPU, and UX and memory. And then the S6, which is notably faster and notably warmer as I pick it up, is 25,000 or 251,751. So obviously it is a good bit temperature wise. Battery temperature is 25.7 degrees C, whereas battery temperature over here is 24 degrees C. Interesting that this runs a little hotter, but then obviously it's got a slightly faster processor in it. So it's kind of fun to see how it actually breaks down, and running through this never managed to catch up, but then I guess that really isn't the point of a benchmark in any way possible. But I figured that perhaps running through some of the various tests, this might have actually caught up or moved past this and completed the benchmark first. But there was a noticeable difference between the two finishing there, where this finished about a good 5 seconds before this. That said, this still scored higher and everything was a lot smoother, so it was able to process, whereas this could have been cutting corners because it can't process something, or dropping frames just helped it keep synchronized with the timings of the actual app. Okay, so we're going to have a quick test of the cameras just to check and see if there's any real noticeable difference between the two. I'm going to take a picture of some of these books over here and try and line it up so that we have the same kind of picture going on. There's one, and we'll do the other one now. That's the other one. So we'll have a quick flick between these two pictures and see which one, well, really looks better. Obviously they aren't exactly identical, but I think you can see a bit of maybe, oops, a bit of richer color in one than the other. If we zoom in on the gate, you can see there is a tad more color in this one than this one. That one looks a bit more washed out, but perhaps that is the flash. Down here there is a little bit of color variance in the blues, look different on where it says Bad Blood, and there's a bit of lesser detail here than there is here, but I think that's entirely down to the way that the picture was taken. They do look much of a muchness, not too much of a difference, perhaps a little bit more pixelated and smoother in this one whenever it comes to down here in the corner, but I wouldn't exactly be able to pick out which is the worst picture. This one does seem to be initially a little less than this. Perhaps it's the brightness between the two screens, because I hadn't really set up before the benchmark. But obviously the software is pretty much identical now that we have both of them running Android 9. This has a little bit more expansion whenever it comes to decks, but it is very much down to the physical side of things. They both run fairly close to each other when it comes to benchmarks, this one being faster, so it's what you prefer and the price difference that you would prefer whenever you're actually picking one of these up. Because obviously the more expensive one of these runs for about £700. This was £600. To buy one of these now, you're probably talking about £450, and there's a lot of them going on to eBay second-hand because people are upgrading to this. So you'll see a lot of people flogging this off. You might be able to get a pretty good deal on one of these. And the difference is quite notable. Obviously it's a lot heavier, but there's a few plus points that I would care to point out. Picking it up directly off the desk is a lot easier, because there is a rounded edge to this, so you can get your fingers in without covering it in fingerprints. This one, it does take a little bit of extra persuasion to get it up off the desk, because this almost sits flush with the desk. Whenever this is underneath there, it does make it a good bit easier to pick it up, because you can almost grab it with your fingers. The fingerprintiness of it isn't as bad. If you have a look at this, which I gave a good rub to before I started doing this unboxing, you can see it's absolutely plastered in fingerprints because it is glass. You get your LED flash, which some people will really relish in because the S6 lost that. And sitting using it without a cover, it is actually a wee bit more comfortable because the bezels are just that little bit wider. And that makes a bit of a difference whenever it comes to use, because I have found myself touching the screen ever so slightly just whenever maybe I'm used to the limitations of this bezel and moving to that one because it is narrower still. I found myself, my hands, my large chubby hands, coming over the edge and actually touching the screen ever so slightly. So it does make a little bit of a difference. But then again, holding it for a longer length of time than this, you start to notice how heavy it is. If you're playing a game and maybe are sitting there for half an hour, you'll start to feel the weight of that as opposed to this. It's hard to say which is the better tablet. Obviously this is, but you're going to pay for it in order to get it. Once this starts coming down in price, I think this is going to be one of the best pickups you could possibly get. Compared to an iPad, it's too difficult to say whether or not you should get this over an iPad, because there's so many other factors to bring in, because it's an entirely different operating system. It's as close as you're going to get to an iPad using Android. Some people say that Android may be on its way out, and the likes of Chrome OS is going to be the next step for Google to start producing tablets with. That remains to be seen. This has Samsung DeX on it as well, which this also does, but I believe that Samsung DeX isn't going to be updated on this as it has been on this to incorporate some of the newer features, which is a bit of a shame. And if they were to start doing that to try and get people to move from one piece of hardware to the next, then I would say goodbye Samsung. But if the modifications to DeX come to the Tab S4, then you do have a really good option here for a productivity tool if you can get it for around £350. As the Tab S3 decreases in price even further, it makes this a much more viable option. The S3 was good. The S4 was a slight improvement, not the massive improvement everyone had hoped. This is the massive improvement everyone hoped to the S3. It's just not the massive improvement to the S4 that everyone had hoped. The S5e has the slower processor of this, but the same kind of form factor as this, and hence a much cheaper price tag. You might find yourself a wee bit limited in what you can do, or it's slowing down a good bit. This thing's lightning fast, and to be honest, this is lightning fast too. Well, obviously depending on what you're doing, the architecture is a wee bit slower inside, but the two of them together, I would not have a problem recommending either of them to anyone. If you're prepared to plump up the money, go for that. If you want to save a few quid, especially whenever it comes to peripherals and extras and things like that, go for that. They're two very, very good tablets. I like them a great deal. It's going to be difficult for me to get rid of this, but I can't justify having it because this does everything that does and more. So that's been the Samsung Galaxy Tab S4 versus the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6. I've copped out and said they're both as good as each other because the price difference dictates that this shouldn't be as good as that, and you'll be quite happy with either of them. But right now I'm going to take this away and play with it a bit more. That one could sit there and the batteries will probably die off, and then I'll pick it up in a wee while and then I'll charge it and then the batteries will die off. I'm not going to be using it again. This is my tablet of choice from here on in. So thanks for watching. Give us a wee thumbs up if you fancy. Hit that subscribe button. Tune in on a Wednesday morning at midnight to talkSPORT for Inspect Your Gadget for an interesting and fun ramble through the weird world of gadgetry. Check out techaddicts.uk for details of the Tech Addict podcast. And other than that, take care.